The Massachusetts woman accused of running over her cop boyfriend, John O'Keefe, and leaving him there to die in the snow. Right now, on the witness stand, Maureen Harnett, an analyst at the Massachusetts State Crime Lab. She was actually on the scene to examine Reed's SUV and the damage to the taillight, which prosecutors say happened when Reed hit O'Keefe. So far, Harnett is testifying she found no blood under the SUV, but there were scratches on the bumper and a hair above the taillight. Now, earlier, O'Keefe's 17-year-old niece, who's not on camera because she is underage, took the stand also. She testified about how Reed and O'Keefe were fighting a lot up into his death. And looking back on that fateful night in January of 2022, the niece also recalled Reed acting frantic while searching for O'Keefe and at one point saying, "Could I have done something?" Let's bring in our Phil Lipoff, also former federal prosecutor, Neama Rahmani. So, Phil, give us the latest from testimony so far. I know you've been tracking it.
Yeah, well, the prosecution, Kira, as you laid out, has had some witnesses on the stand. We're going through witnesses today in a much faster clip than we have. People have been on the stand for 3 days. You think of Jen McCabe and the sergeant who was in charge of the investigation. But today, as you said, it started off with John O'Keefe's niece. When John O'Keefe's sister died, he took her 2 children in, a niece and a nephew. That girl took the stand today. As you said, she's a minor, so there were no recordings of it. But she did testify about how their relationship, Karen Reed's relationship with John O'Keefe, had soured a bit. She heard John O'Keefe saying, this could be the end of it. It could have run its course. They're trying to offer that kind of testimony to counter what the defense has been sort of insinuating, that something else happened in that house. Perhaps there was a fight in that house with someone who was sending inappropriate texts to Karen Reed. But now the prosecution is trying to hone in on their theory of the case, which is Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe and killed him with her car.
So, Neama, prosecutors say that the damage to Reed's SUV happened when Reed hit O'Keefe, but her defense introduced this video which shows Reed's car backing into O'Keefe's vehicle as she left her home to go look and eventually find his body. Now that we have the analyst testifying that she found no blood under the SUV, which side of the story seems more believable to you?
Kira, this is the former prosecutor in me, but I'm going to go with the Commonwealth. And like Phil said, this is really the key piece of evidence in this case. When was that taillight broken? And the investigation certainly wasn't conducted the way it should have been. An audit revealed that. But if, of course, it was broken outside the Albert's home, that is strong evidence at a minimum for manslaughter. So you have a testimony from Harnett here. You have a lot of discussion of the different pieces of plastic. Were there 3? Were there more? The defense is really had 2 theories here. One was, like you said, that the taillight was broken when Karen Reed went to look for John O'Keefe. And the second is that it was broken even later when the law enforcement impounded the vehicle. So the timing of the break is very important. The timing really of everything in this case is important, just like the Google searches that we've been talking about at length too.
Phil, the niece testified about her relationship with Reed, saying that she sometimes felt that Reed had a coldness toward her. What do you make of that? And what are some other highlights from what the niece had to say?
Well, that seemed to be on the tail end of the relationship near 2021, 2022. They did have, she testified, at least in the first trial, that they did have a good relationship and she felt close to her, at least initially. But then they took the niece through this New Year's Eve trip to Aruba where Karen Reed felt that John O'Keefe had perhaps been with somebody else, kissed somebody else, and that caused a lot of fighting. And the niece testified that the fighting came back from vacation to the apartment, and it continued. So they really put her on the stand to show that the relationship was souring toward the end, and that would be motive, the prosecution says, for Karen Reed to have done something to John O'Keefe. And it directly flies in the face of some of what the defense has been doing, pointing the finger at folks like Brian Albert and Brian, the ATF officer who was in the house at the time as well.
So, Neama, jurors were told that the niece's testimony can only be used to determine Reed's state of mind. What impression do you think that made on the jury?
I think it's important, right? Here you have someone who's a child, O'Keefe's niece, her Her parents passed away. O'Keefe was taking care of them. And it shows a couple things that one, Reed didn't like the kids, and two, this toxic, tumultuous, angry relationship. You know, we heard about the many, many missed phone calls the night that John O'Keefe died, the angry voicemails. And if you're the Commonwealth and if you're really trying to prove murder here, you need to show that intent to kill or cause serious bodily injury, right? This is not just an accident involving a vehicle. Let's not forget, this is a murder case. So you have to show that motive, that intent. And when you have an independent witness, a child that's talking about this angry Karen Reed, I think that is important evidence for the Commonwealth because it goes to her state of mind.
Phil Lipoff, Neama Rahmani, thank you so much.